I figured since I missed last week's upload of spooky movies for the month of October, and since this is the last, well, this is Halloween, right? So I figured why not? Why not go ahead and do two reviews in one video? Wow, what a bargain. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about 1983, The Hunger, directed by Tony Scott, and Barbarian, which came out this year. I've been looking forward to seeing both of these movies. The Hunger's been on my list for a very long time. Finally got around to seeing it. And Barbarian, man, I've heard a lot of good things. I mean, wow, don't, go in blind. Don't look at spoilers, don't look at reviews, all that kind of stuff. We're going to be talking both of these movies very spoiler free. So yeah, let's just get into it. Let's start with The Hunger. Directed by first-time director Tony Scott, The Hunger tells a stylishly gothic tale of an undying beauty, unending passion, and their terrible cost. Centuries-old Egyptian vampire Miriam and her centuries-old lover John feed on urban nightclub goers. But while Miriam can bestow a very long life on her lovers, she cannot grant them her immortality. When John starts to rapidly age, Miriam seduces Sarah, a doctor researching premature aging. The movie stars Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon, and David Bowie. If you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you should probably know by now that yes, I'm a big fan of Ridley Scott and his late brother Tony Scott, two amazing directors with a style that I just love. It works for me. Their movies almost always work for me, even if they don't always pan out. Kind of like this one. 1983 was sort of just smack dab in the middle of all of this I guess this new form of media, music videos, right? I mean, music videos have been around for a while, but MTV really started making it popular when it premiered in 1981. So you've got this the movie starts out like the beginning of a like a music video. It looks like a music video or a commercial in a way. The way that things are framed, everything is got that very quick sort of almost a disjointed sort of feeling, and it's meant to I think meant to make you nervous, and it's supposed to be suspenseful. I mean, it is kind of, but the whole movie is done this way, and there are times when I feel like the editing should just calm down, and it never really does, and that's kind of a bummer. As I said, this was Tony Scott's first movie, and after this he made Top Gun, and then he made Days of Thunder, and then he made True Romance, and he's made all these amazing movies that I've always loved his style. It's very close to his brother, but in a more, I would almost say, a less arty kind of way. I would say. I mean, I think they're more mainstream, Tony's movies, but in this movie in particular, it feels a lot like what Ridley would have made. The way that things are framed, it's absolutely gorgeous. This movie looks amazing, like beautifully shot. Look, there's a lot of curtains. Okay, there's just a lot of sheer curtains, and but like I said, I loved it. I really loved the way that the movie looked. I probably shouldn't have said that I loved it. I don't love the movie. Okay, the movie doesn't really work. It's a weird, because I thought this was a horror movie. It even says it's a horror movie, so I'm thinking, okay, Tony Scott horror movie, awesome. Halloween, let's do a review. It wasn't a horror movie. It was more of a drama. And it was more of an erotic thriller, and something that I didn't expect. This movie really pushed some boundaries. I mean, in 1983, you've got this seduction between Catherine Deneuve and Susan Sarandon. It's like, wow. And they get all hot and steamy, and it's like, yeah, for 1983, the people were probably like, whoa, what's going on here? But the thing is, it sort of leans into this idea of vampires as almost like non-gender, even Interview with the Vampire kind of went into this, that it didn't matter anymore. It's not like their sex organs worked anymore because, they have no blood. I mean, we can talk about this, but anyway, so it's one of those weird things where it's basically you're looking for a companion, to live your immortal life with. And that's kind of the interesting thing about it. On top of that, though, there's this other layer that I don't know if it was super intentional, but there's a transition that happens from human to vampire, and it's very it's very reminiscent of what I've seen of drug withdrawals. And the sweating and the almost the pain and all that stuff. I don't know if that was intentional, but I mean, in 1983, there was a there was a drug problem in America. Well, there kind of is now too. But anyway, I just found that interesting, and I'm not sure if that was completely intentional, but there you go. You can see elements of Ridley's style in the way that Tony shoots some things, but there's the way that things are framed. Like I said, the movie's beautiful. I don't know if I can recommend this movie unless you're really into vampire lore and you're into the idea of vampires as immortals and what that would be like. That's kind of an interesting thing, but I don't know. It was just kind of there for me. If I had to give a score for this, I mean, if I had to, I'd probably give this like a 2 3/4 stars out of 4. And that basically means for me, it's not really recommended for a general audience. For most people, I don't think they'd get a whole lot of out of this movie, especially now in 2022. It seems very dated and almost too leisurely paced, if you know what I mean. But like I said, if you're a fan of Ridley Scott and or Tony Scott, it's definitely worth taking a look at it because it's, like I said, just beautifully shot. And for a first-time director, I would say it's definitely worthy of attention, and I'm sure they got a lot of attention back when this movie was released. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's move on with Barbarian. Written and directed by Zach Kreger, Barbarian tells the story of a young woman who arrives at her Airbnb rental late at night only to find that the house has been mistakenly double booked and a strange man is already staying there. Against her better judgment, she decides to stay the night anyway, but soon discovers that there is much more to be afraid of in the house than the other house guest. The movie stars Georgina Campbell, Bill Skarsgård, and Justin Long. This is one of those movies where I really don't want to talk about what goes down in this movie because I went into it blind, and I think even the trailers are done in a way to make you not know what to expect. And I think that works to the movie's credit because you don't know where this movie is going. I mean, if you watch that trailer, you might think you know what this movie's about, but I guarantee you don't. You just don't. So when reviewing a movie like this, that's a horror movie, right? Supposed to be scary, all of those things. Did it work? For me, not really. This movie goes through multiple changes, I will say. And I think that's about as much as I really want to say. It's almost like, okay, here's this part, and then here's this next part, which you're like, okay, what's going on here? And then when those parts start to do this, you're like, oh, okay. And then some really crazy things happen. Okay, there's some really crazy things that happen in this movie that were, well, like I said, I didn't see it coming. I'm a fan of a good story. I don't care what genre it's in. I want a good story. And the problem is they lost me a few times in the movie where it just went, okay, like, I mean, I get what you're trying to do here, but let's move on with it. Like, I was feeling restless. I'll say this, the first act, probably the first, I would say 40 minutes of the movie, I was in. I was locked in, was curious, was wanting to know more, was behind the actors. I really, really enjoyed the performances here. And I can't go into detail because I don't want to give anything away, but there are characters that I really liked. I really liked the way that they were being played. One of them is played in a way that makes you not like them immediately, and it just keeps getting worse. And that's fine because that's one of the things. I think if a story and a character are done well, then you can feel whatever you're supposed to feel about those characters. Like if you hate a character, that means that they're doing their job correctly, right? Because you hate them. And if you like them, then they're doing a good job as well. I really want to talk more about a specific one, but I can't because it would ruin some of the surprises. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people, and it seems like there are a lot of people that really enjoyed the way that this movie continued to morph and change into into these horror elements that are, as I said, genuinely surprising. There are shots in this movie that I never thought I'd see. Um, Very strange, very strange. It got to be where, like, okay, I get it, let's move on. And I think that's where they lost me. And then there are things, especially I'll say in the third act, there are things that happen that break rules. I don't know how to say it without giving anything away. I'll just say there's some falling. There's a falling that happens, and I'm like, okay, how did that happen? How did that didn't make any sense. I don't know. I feel like kind of like this old fuddy-duddy who's like, well, that's not the way movies are supposed to go. I'm fine with movies breaking rules. I'm fine with things, you know, taking their time to get the point of the movie across. I felt it drag. And the places that the movie takes the audience just wasn't as interesting as that first 40 minutes. I feel like in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like they said, okay, we've got this really, really tight first act that really works. Suspenseful, all the right things. Your emotions are going up and down. You're scared, you know, for safety, and then you're not, and then you feel more comfortable, and then you're scared again. It works really, really well. And there's even parts where characters do things that are like smart, like not your typical horror movie trope. Like you see this and you go, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's not, I wouldn't do that. And they don't. And it's like, hey, cool. You know, it's nice to see that they're aware enough to know that most audience members would go, nope, not doing that. It's such a weird one. I want to give it credit for that first act because that first act was really, really good. But like I said, the rest of the movie just didn't really gel with me. And by the end of it, I was kind of like, okay, I'm glad I watched it. I just wish that they'd continued with the feeling that I got from that first act. And it just, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It took a turn that I wasn't, it didn't shock me. It didn't actually scare me. It annoyed me. So it's kind of a weird one. So I'm going to have to give this, I'll say this. If you're a horror fan, go in blind. So go in now. Don't listen to anybody else. You know, don't, in fact, hopefully you didn't listen to everything I said. Don't listen to all of the stuff about this movie. Go in blind and see if it's for you. It is a ride. It is definitely a ride. You may enjoy it, you may not. I'll say 3 stars out of 4 for horror fans. For everyone else, like if you're like me and you're not that much of a horror fan, 2.5 stars. So yeah, The Hunger and Barbarian, 2 very, very different movies separated by 39 years. So, yeah, not exactly the most successful duo of movies that I could have watched for Halloween, but hey, that's how things go sometimes, you know? So let me know down below if you've seen either one of these movies, what you thought of them. We'll talk about it because it's fun. It's always fun. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Happy Halloween, and we'll see you on the next one.